A woman is being dragged through a dusty courtyard by men who have already decided she is going to die. It is early morning. The temple is filling up. She has been pulled out of a bed that was not hers. And now she is standing in front of a crowd, in front of a teacher, with her sin announced out loud for everyone to hear. The men holding her are holding stones, and they are not wrong about the law. The law really does say she should die. Picture it. The weight of the rock in a man's hand. The way the crowd goes quiet when they sense blood is coming. The woman, half dressed, on her knees in the dirt, not even looking up. They have her. They have the verdict. All they need now is for the teacher to agree. And here is what most people never notice about that morning. Jesus had every legal right to condemn her. He didn't. And the people who walked away furious that day were not the sinners. They were the religious. This is not a story about being soft on sin. This is not a story about a man who looked the other way. This is not a story about lowering the bar so everybody passes. This is a story about who Jesus went after and who he refused to destroy, and how those two lists are almost the exact opposite of what you'd expect. Because there is one kind of person in the Gospels that Jesus never let off the hook. Not once. He hunted them with words, and we will get to who they are. But not yet. First, you have to watch what he did with the people everyone else had already written off. Stay with me, because by the end of this, the question is not going to be whether you are sinful enough to be forgiven. The question is going to be something far more uncomfortable than that. Let's go back to the courtyard. The men are called scribes and Pharisees. These are not bad men by the standards of their world. These are the careful ones, the ones who kept the rules, who memorized the law, who fasted twice a week and tithed down to the spice in their kitchen. They have brought this woman as a test. The Gospel of John tells you that part out loud. They wanted to trap him. If he says stone her, he is just another hard man with a rock. If he says let her go, he has broken the law of Moses in front of witnesses. So they wait, and Jesus does something strange. He bends down and starts writing in the dirt with his finger. Nobody knows what he wrote. People have argued about it for 2,000 years. And then he stands up and says one sentence, "Let the one of you who has never sinned throw the first stone." And he bends back down. Read that again. He did not argue the law. He did not deny her guilt. He just handed the stone back to every man holding one and asked if they were clean enough to throw it. The gospel says they left one at a time, starting with the oldest. Think about why the oldest left first. The oldest had the most years of sin to remember. And when the courtyard was empty, Jesus stood up and asked her a question he already knew the answer to. "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" And she says, "No one, sir." Now hold on to the word he uses next, because it is the whole point. He says, "Neither do I condemn you." The Greek word there is katakrino. It is a courtroom word. It means to pass sentence, to issue the verdict that ends in punishment. It is the word for the judge's gavel coming down. And the one person in that courtyard who actually had the authority to bring that gavel down, the only one who truly had never sinned, the only one whose stone would have been justified, is the one who refuses to throw it. Then he says the second half, the part people forget. Go and sin no more. He does not pretend she is innocent. He frees her and he calls her higher in the same breath. That is the pattern you are going to see again and again. He never condemns, and he never lies about the sin either. Now watch him do it again, but this time with a man everybody had real reasons to hate. His name is Zacchaeus, and in his town, he was the most despised man alive. He was a tax collector, not the way we think of taxes. In the Roman system, men like Zacchaeus bought the right to collect taxes from their own people, and then squeezed out as much extra as they could and kept it. The Jewish historian Josephus describes these tax farmers as collaborators, men who got rich by selling out their own neighbors to the empire that occupied them. To his town, Zacchaeus was not just a thief. He was a traitor with a Roman badge. And Luke gives you this little detail that I love. Zacchaeus was short. So when Jesus came through town and the crowd packed the road, this rich, hated little man could not see over anybody's shoulders. So he did something no dignified man of means would ever do. He ran ahead, hiked up his robe, and climbed a tree like a child. Picture the most powerful, most resented man in town clinging to a branch so he can catch a glimpse of a traveling teacher. There is something already broken open in him. He doesn't know it yet. And Jesus stops under that exact tree. Out of a whole crowd of decent law-keeping people who would have loved a word from him, Jesus looks up into the branches at the one man everybody agreed was beyond saving, and he says, Zacchaeus, come down. I'm staying at your house today. And Luke tells you the crowd grumbled. Of course they did. He has gone to be the guest of a sinner. That is the complaint. Not he is comforting a victim. He is eating with a crook. And it offends them. But watch what the kindness does. Nobody made Zacchaeus give anything back. There is no sermon recorded, no demand, no list of conditions. The man just stands up in his own house and says, Lord, half of everything I own, I'm giving to the poor. And anyone I cheated, I'll pay back 4 times over. The law only required him to pay back what he stole plus a fifth. He volunteers 400%. That is not a man being scolded into repentance. That is a man undone by being wanted. You feel the thread starting to form? Jesus is not going easy on these people because their sin is small. Their sin is not small. He is doing something else entirely. He is refusing to lead with the verdict. Let's go to a well at noon, because the next person is somebody Jesus was not even supposed to be talking to. She is a Samaritan woman. And for a Jewish rabbi, that is 2 strikes before she says a word. 1, she is a Samaritan. And Jews and Samaritans had hated each other for centuries. The rabbis had a saying so harsh, I'll soften it, that a Samaritan woman was considered unclean from birth. 2, she is a woman alone, and a respectable teacher did not speak to a woman alone in public. And there is a third thing. She comes to the well at noon, in the heat, alone. Everyone else drew water in the cool of the morning together. She comes when no one will be there. That detail tells you she has been pushed to the edges of her own town. People know things about her. And Jesus, tired from walking, sits at that well and asks her for a drink. She is so stunned, she says it out loud. How can you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman, for water? What follows is the longest recorded conversation Jesus has with anyone in the Gospels. Sit with that. The longest theological conversation Jesus has with a single human being in all 4 Gospels is with a triple outsider woman at a well in the heat of the day. He talks to her about living water, about worship, about who he really is. And yes, he names her sin. He tells her she has had 5 husbands, and the man she is with now is not one. He does not pretend, but he does not lead with it, and he does not weaponize it. He just keeps offering her something better than the life that left her drawing water alone. And she runs back into the town she was hiding from and tells everyone. The woman who came to the well alone becomes the first preacher to a whole Samaritan village. Quick word before we go further. If this kind of slow walk through the Gospels, watching what Jesus actually did instead of what we assume he did, is meeting you somewhere, consider subscribing and staying with us. That support is what makes this work possible. And to those of you already here helping this channel keep going, thank you. You are part of every script we write. Now, back to the well, because the pattern is about to get heavier. Here is the part nobody tells you. Every person we have looked at so far had a sin everyone could see. The adulteress, the traitor, the woman with 5 husbands. These were public failures, and Jesus refused to add a stone to the pile. But now, I want to show you 2 people whose stories go even deeper, because they were not just forgiven. They were called. Watch what he does with a man sitting at a tax booth. His name is Levi. You probably know him better as Matthew. And he is doing the most hated job in Israel, sitting at the toll table, taking money from his own people for Rome. Jesus walks by, and out of everyone he could have picked to follow him, out of the fishermen and the zealots and the respectable, he stops at the tax booth and says 2 words, "Follow me." And Mark says Levi got up and left it, just left the money on the table. And then he threw a party and filled his house with other tax collectors and sinners, the only friends a man like him had left. And the religious leaders see Jesus eating in that house, reclining at a table full of crooks and outcasts. And they ask his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with people like this?" And Jesus hears it, and he gives the answer that explains his entire ministry. It is not the healthy who need a doctor, he says, but the sick. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Sit with that. He is not saying some people are righteous and don't need him. He is being cutting. He is saying the only people I cannot help are the ones who are convinced they don't need a doctor. The sick ones are getting saved. The ones who think they're healthy are the ones in danger. And there's the splagchnizomai underneath all of this, a Greek word the Gospels use for the way Jesus felt when he saw broken people. It does not mean a polite, distant pity. It is a gut word. It means to be moved in the deepest part of you, the way your stomach drops when you see someone you love in pain. That is what moved through Jesus when he looked at a tax booth and saw a man instead of a traitor. Now let me show you one more, and this one I want you to feel. There is a dinner at a Pharisee's house. The host is named Simon, and he is exactly the kind of careful, respectable man you'd expect to invite a famous teacher to dinner. And in the middle of the meal, a woman comes in off the street. Luke just calls her a woman in the city who was a sinner. Everyone in that room knew what that meant. And she comes and stands behind Jesus at his feet, and she begins to weep, and her tears fall on his feet, and she has nothing to wipe them with. So she lets down her hair, which a respectable woman never did in public, and she wipes his feet with her own hair, and she pours expensive perfume on them. And Simon, the host, says nothing out loud, but Luke tells you what he thought. If this man were really a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. And Jesus, who could hear the thought, turns it into a question. Simon, 2 men owed a debt. One owed a little, one owed a fortune. Both were forgiven. Which one will love more? And Simon, almost annoyed, gives the obvious answer, the one who was forgiven more. And Jesus says, "You have judged correctly." Then he says the line that should stop every respectable person cold. He looks at the weeping woman and says to Simon, "Her many sins have been forgiven, and that is why she loves much. But whoever has been forgiven little, loves little." Read that again. He is not insulting the woman. He is diagnosing the host. He is saying, Simon, the reason she is on the floor crying with gratitude and you are sitting in your chair unmoved is not that you are better than her. It is that you have never once admitted you needed forgiving at all. Her sin was loud. Yours was quiet. But quiet sin does the most dangerous thing of all. It convinces you that you don't need a doctor. Now, I want to show you a different kind of failure, because not everyone on this list was a stranger off the street. One of them was his closest friend. His name is Peter. And Peter did something worse in a way than anyone we have looked at. The strangers betrayed a law. Peter betrayed the friend who loved him most. On the night Jesus was arrested, the man who had sworn he would die before he ever denied him stood in a courtyard by a fire and was asked 3 times if he knew Jesus. And 3 times he said no. The last time, he cursed. And then a rooster crowed. And Luke says Jesus turned and looked at him across the courtyard. And Peter went out and wept like his chest was breaking. Now think about what Peter deserved. He had the most to lose because he had been given the most. He had walked on water. He had been told he was the rock. And in the one moment it counted, he folded in front of a servant girl. If anyone on this list earned a verdict, a man like that did, the inner circle, the one who should have known better, And here is what Jesus does. After he rises from the dead, he finds Peter back where he started fishing, and he makes a fire on the beach, the same kind of charcoal fire Peter had stood beside when he denied him. The smell alone must have gutted him. And Jesus does not bring up the betrayal. He does not say, "How could you?" He asks one question 3 times, once for each denial. "Simon, do you love me?" 3 times Peter says yes. And 3 times Jesus gives him back his job. "Feed my sheep." He does not just forgive the man who failed him worse. He hands him the keys to the whole church. Say that out loud. The man who would go on to lead the entire early movement, the one Christians have argued about for 2,000 years, started his second chance over a breakfast where the only thing on the menu was forgiveness he could not earn. And now you can feel the thread, fully formed, heavy in your hands. Jesus did not refuse to condemn these people because their sin was small. The adulteress, the traitor, the outcast, the taxman, the woman on the floor. He refused to condemn them because they already knew they were drowning. And the only people he could not reach were the ones standing on the shore, certain they were dry. Which finally brings us to the open question I planted at the very beginning. I told you there was one kind of person Jesus never let off the hook. You have probably guessed it by now. It was the religious. Go and read the 23rd chapter of Matthew sometime and brace yourself. The same mouth that said, "Neither do I condemn you," to a woman caught in adultery, turns to the scribes and Pharisees, the most religious men in the nation, and says, "Woe to you," 7 times. He calls them blind guides. He calls them whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside and full of dead bones inside. He says they strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. This is the harshest language Jesus uses against anyone in the entire Gospels. And he does not aim it at prostitutes or thieves or drunks. He aims it at the people who never missed a service. Read that again. The gentlest words Jesus ever spoke were to the people the world had condemned. The harshest words he ever spoke were to the people who did the condemning. Now, I have to take you to the hardest scene of all, because there is one more person on this list, and he meets Jesus in the last possible hour of both their lives. He is a criminal. We don't even know his name. He is hanging on a cross next to Jesus, dying the slow Roman death that the historian Tacitus called the most wretched of deaths, reserved for slaves and rebels, and the worst of the worst. This man admits it himself. He turns to the other criminal and says, "We are getting what we deserve." He is not innocent. He is a guilty man hours from death with nothing left to offer. No time to clean up, no good deeds left to do, no tree to climb, no perfume to pour, no village to go preach to. He has nothing but the last few minutes of a wasted life. And he turns his head and he says 6 words. "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." That is the whole prayer. There is no creed in it, no track record, just a dying thief asking a dying man not to forget him. And Jesus, who is suffocating to death, who can barely pull in enough air to speak, spends some of his last breath on him. "Today, you will be with me in paradise." Sit with that for a second. The very last person Jesus saved before he died was a condemned criminal who had done nothing right and had no time left to fix it. He could not be baptized. He could not join a church. He could not pay anyone back 4 times over. He brought nothing but his need, and it was enough. Think about a courtroom. Think about what it is to stand in front of a judge and wait for the verdict. That long, terrible silence before the gavel comes down, knowing you are guilty and there is nothing you can say. Every person in this video stood in that silence. The woman in the courtyard, the traitor in the tree, the outcast at the well, the taxman at the booth, the woman on the floor, the friend by the fire, the thief on the cross. Every one of them was guilty. Every one of them was waiting for the gavel, and the judge looked at each of them and refused to bring it down. The woman caught in adultery did not get a stone. She got a future. Zacchaeus did not get exposed. He got a guess. The woman at the well did not get sent away. She got sent out. Matthew did not get a lecture. He got a calling. The woman on the floor did not get a rebuke. She got peace, go in peace. Peter did not get fired. He got the keys. And the thief on the cross did not get the death he deserved. He got paradise. And the religious men who came with stones in their hands, they got the only condemnation in the whole story. Not because their sin was bigger, because they would not admit they had any. So here are the three things I want you to carry out of this. First, the truth about Jesus. He was never soft on sin. He named it every single time, to the woman in the courtyard, to the woman at the well, to all of them. He just refused to lead with the verdict. He led with the rescue and let the rescue do what no verdict ever could. Conviction without condemnation. That is the pattern, and it never breaks. Second, what this means for you. Your sin was never the thing that could keep you from him. Not the loud kind, not the public kind, not the kind you are sure is too far gone. The thief proves there is no such thing as too late and no such thing as too far. The only thing that ever kept anyone out was the quiet certainty that they didn't need to come in at all. And third, the one that should land in your gut. The most dangerous place to stand in this entire story was not in the courtyard with the stones at your feet. It was in the Pharisee's chair, comfortable, respectable, and certain you were already fine, because the people who knew they were drowning got pulled out of the water. It was the one standing safely on the shore who got left there. So the question this leaves you with is not whether you are too sinful for Jesus. You already know how that story ends. The question is the one Simon never answered, sitting in his chair while a forgiven woman wept on the floor. Which one are you? The one on the floor who knows what she's been forgiven? Or the one in the chair who can't think of anything he needs forgiving for? I'm not going to answer that one for you, but I'll ask you this, and I'd like you to actually tell me, of all the people in this video, which one did you see yourself in? The woman in the courtyard, the man in the tree, the friend by the fire, the thief on the cross, or Simon in the chair? Leave a comment, even one word. Subscribe if this changed how you see the way Jesus dealt with people. Share this with someone who has spent their whole life feeling like they are standing in that courtyard, waiting for the stones to fly. And may the God who refused to throw the first stone and refused to bring the gavel down and spent his last breath on a dying thief meet you exactly where you are sitting right now. God bless you.